The bond between a mother and child defies easy explanations because, how can you put into words what it's like to feel life grow within you, to nurture it, and to spend months dreaming of what your child might become? And somehow even more amazing is after giving birth, you witness this miracle. You watch this child develop into an individual human being with personality, talents, and imagination all their own. Which also makes it all the more unimaginable if you've had to experience the unspeakable tragedy of losing a child. So consider this our official trigger warning, because our exceptional guest today has gone through that loss. But out of her loss, she discovered a reservoir of strength she didn't even know she had. Jessica Janzen is a beautiful, bright spark of joy who's been lighting up the scene as an inspiring coach, speaker, entrepreneur, and author. If you're meeting her here for the first time, you'd never know that she carries with her every single day the loss of her son, Lewiston. Under any circumstance, this is the kind of loss that could cripple a person. And of course, the grief was overwhelming, but somewhere deep inside, Jessica found the strength to endure and did the bravest thing of all, harnessed her pain and transformed it into purpose. Her divine message? That life is indeed short and filled with both the greatest joy and the deepest pain. But leaning into our suffering not only wastes the precious time we have on this earth, but it also prevents us from shining our light on others. Jessica's resolve is something I've rarely seen. I'm in awe of her because together with her husband, who she affectionately calls Hot Ronnie, she created a legacy for her son by helping others. How did she do it? Where did she find the strength? And how can her life lessons help you get through your darkest hour? Brace yourself for another unforgettable episode of the Gratitudeology podcast.
Will you walk through the fire? Would you ride through the storm? Will you walk on a wire? Will you save me if I fall? Will you break through the madness? Set us down where we're safe. I'll be right here waiting till you find me again.
I first met Jessica at Impact 11, the speaker development program in Michigan, where many in our circle come to hone our skills. The workshops at Impact 11 are loaded with impressive people. So when one shines through, you know that's a sparkly bright diamond. That was Jessica Janzen. We immediately gravitated to each other from across the room and introduced ourselves. We had only just met, but we decided to stay late after class that day and help each other with ideas for our respective keynote pitches. This is the kind of person that she is. An immediate bestie. A roll up your sleeves and help kind of gal. And someone you just want to sit crisscross applesauce with, have a cup of tea, and chat. Yep, we became immediate girlfriends. Of course, it was a no-brainer that I wanted to have her on the show. Not only is her story moving and inspiring, but I think we could all really learn a thing or two from Jessica about grace in the face of unthinkable adversity. Jessica Janzen, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me. I'm so honored and excited to be here.
I really like that we did Barry's boot camp this morning together.
Yeah, get the mindset right.
That we started our day with a little sweat. And sweating is so much a part of your story, and we're going to get there in a second. So tell me just about the beginning.
So I'm originally from Canada. My parents were farmers. So my dad is a first-generation farmer. So grew up on a farm, rural Manitoba.
You grew up on a farm?
Yeah. So two brothers, like really traditional like life. Like we're all like in it together. It was like you wanted to have friends over. You had to finish chores. You had to do the work before you play. And it wasn't like you could just bike over to your friend's house. Like we're rural, like you'd have to organize it. So one of my best friends, we're still close to this day. Laura would be like, okay, we're coming over. We both rode horses. We grew up doing like 4-H and all of that, right? Yeah. And so life was great, but I very much so resisted being on the farm. We had one TV with like bunny ears on it, 4 channels, and I longed for a life where I could be in the big city. Like I was like, I want to move to New York. I want to be famous. I want to be an actress. And, did all the things, but like it was just so different in terms of opportunities and what the everyday looked like. We ended up going to high school in the city just because like the country education was pretty behind the times. It felt like my parents really valued education and giving us, every opportunity to succeed. So, growing up, we're all in it. And I really resented growing up because we could never shut off the business and like our home life because our house was on the farmyard. It's not like you drove to work. Like my dad wasn't a lawyer and like shut the laptop or turn off the computer. And so we were always in it. And now looking back with the lens that I have as a 39-year-old, I take my kids back every year for harvest. I'm like, oh my gosh, I really had such a blessing in seeing what it's like to integrate work and family. And then just to see how you can bring them alongside of it. Like I got to be a part of that. I saw my dad and my mom build these relationships, the loyalty, the work ethic. So I hated it growing up, but being in the position that I am in now, it was like, this was such a blessing. But it was so important for me to understand work ethic and drive, but it also caused a resentment where I think I have a chip on my shoulder working through it with my therapist right now about like proving people that I could do it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
For sure.
So it's like this tug and pull. And I have these amazing brothers. My brother's a professor in Illinois. He's super brilliant. My other brother's on the farm. And we have a really great connection as everybody. And we've all gone off into the directions that we were meant to go in, which is really cool.
I grew up doing horsey summer camp. So like my mom would take me off of the competitive equestrian circuit and send me to summer camp where I was going to like shovel shit and fix fences.
Like do the actual stuff.
Yeah, like
the actual work.
That's how my mom really made sure that I was balanced with it. So I would just love to hear, because working on it, there's nothing, in my opinion, there's nothing better in the world than working on a farm for building character.
I honestly told my parents they should open up a summer camp where like, and they have had kids that were struggling or in their youth that it was like, come work on the farm. My mom always had room for one more at the table. And that life lesson of like, of course we'll make room. Like even if there isn't room, we'll find a way to make a seat for you at the table to like extend the dinner. And for me, I think the challenge I'm the only daughter. I felt like I didn't have a spot necessarily because my grandfather was very like, the men do the work, the women in the kitchen. And so when I did work, I felt like I really wanted to prove them, like I can drive a tractor, I can drive a semi, I can do these things. The semi, not well, but I can get into first gear, that's about it. So there was this drive of like trying to find my spot and my way, which seemed to be the challenge. But like, this is my lane, this is my journey, I'm going to do it in my time. I don't need the approval of other people, and it doesn't need to make sense. We can talk about that. But for me, it was trying to find my way and doing it on my own terms, because I was often pushed into the kitchen. That's how it's always been done. But like we brought the joy, I really believe. My mom and I would have kitchen dance parties. It was really special growing up, but it was very challenging for me when I was longing for something else that I didn't have, and I was always looking on somebody else's page.
So at what point did it go from being a little bit stuck on the farm to moving your way into fitness?
So I graduated high school. I did a 2-year college diploma, business administration, got hired right away, was with a company. And I was dating our next door neighbor who was about 1.5 miles down the road from us. And we had been on again, off again. And I remember the last time we broke up, I was like, we can't do this anymore. Like either you're in or you're out. And he was like, I'm out. And so 6 months later, my girlfriend was moving to Calgary. It's about a 13-hour drive from my parents' farm. And I just remember being like, this is it. And so I had $300 in my bank account. I had no plan, like the company I was with was even willing to give me a job. And I was like, no, I'm going to do this all on my own. Like, so stupid. And so I moved to Calgary, and that's where I sat down on our front porch of this house that we were renting, and I'm like, this is it. I get to write my next chapter. No one has preconceived notions of who I am. I'm not boxed in. Like, go write an amazing chapter. And it wasn't like it was all smooth, but I just remember wanting to get connected, and it was like the fitness community. I just was like, I felt this calling to like inspire people and lift them up. I've always loved the stage and speaking, and that was like really the very first spot where I got to be around people and help elevate them and bring out the best in them. And so I started teaching fitness and really got connected into this wellness community, and it was an incredible journey. And I would say if you're ever lonely in community, the biggest lesson I learned from that is the best people are the people who work out, because they value health and wellness and they value that connection. So get involved in that. And that's truly what like skyrocketed, I think, my confidence, my mindset, and how I showed up.
And I found that community. I was like, oh my God, here's my tribe. And I loved it so much.
I said that when we were finished working out, I was like, women who like want to see other women succeed, like you're fist bumping, you're like, you got this, girl, you're pushing someone to be better. Like that's where incredible women lie, is in a fitness room, in a class, wanting to take care of themselves, prioritizing themselves so they can serve and be amazing at what they're called to do.
So I had read that you had started kind of working, I think, were you at the desk? You managed a fitness club.
Yeah. How did you get all this?
Oh, I do my research, girl.
Shit, girl.
You had said that you were working long hours and that caused you to gain weight. And then in being honest about that on social media, about that journey of the up down, is where you built your community online. Is that
totally
track?
I was a general manager of a club in Winnipeg. I'm really good at problem solving. So people come to me to be like, can you solve this problem? Can you fix this? Like I can turn it around. So they were about to shut down this fitness club. They couldn't keep staff. They didn't have like a great culture. And so I turned it around. But like you, it's like, it's never done. It's never enough. So I would be there till 11, midnight. My mom would be like, I lived on the farm still with my parents. I was young. I was like 19, 20. I'm like, Mom, I'm still here. And she's like, you need to come home. It's not safe being in that area of town. Like, but I would nap in the tanning bed.
Stop it.
So I would tan for like the 15 minutes, set the timer, and then I'd be so exhausted. I would sleep for another hour, get up, do another 2-3 hours of work, because I was so committed to the solution. But in that, my personal health really started to decline. And I have been a yo-yo up and down. I mean, I'll show you a picture after this. I was puffy. When I was in Calgary at one point, like I looked like somebody had taken like a Michelin man, like someone had taken a pump to me, and I gained a bunch of weight. I don't think I've had a great relationship with food. And then I think in those valleys, not taking care and prioritizing and understanding like what you put in is truly the fuel. So I've yo-yoed, and that fitness community, then I had to step out of it. I chose not to work at a club, because too, you'd go and work out and then you're on the treadmill trying to do your thing. And someone's like, excuse me, you got a soap in the, and you're like, I'm trying to just do my cardio, but I cared. So I jump off and you go fill up the soap machine and check all the toilet papers. And so it was a pause in that, and then now resetting. And as a fitness instructor, it's like, just because you teach fitness, that doesn't equate to your actual workout. So I have this pull to want to go back and teach, but I'm also so grateful that I can come in and just attend a class and do that for myself.
And it is so powerful. I've rarely left a SoulCycle class without being in tears. It's just what happens. Why does that happen? I don't know that anyone's been able to pinpoint it. It's the endorphins, it's the music, it's the vibe, it's all of it.
Like the somatic healing that happens.
It's somatic healing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, tell me a little bit about that as part of your healing, your evolution, and your journey.
For me, there's nothing like being in a classroom and having a microphone. And my favorite part, I taught spin for a number of years, was being able to get off the bike, look at somebody in the eyes, and this is, I coach women now, but this is my favorite thing to do, is like, you have more in you. And when an instructor connects with you and says, I believe in you, you can give me more. Because anytime I'm working out, I'm fighting, I wanna quit, this is too hard, this is too heavy, I don't wanna be here, I have all this stuff to do. So even just getting there, but now once you're in the room, sometimes you're like, oh, I'm gonna hold back. Oh, I'm exhausted. Oh, I can't, I'm gonna quit. But if someone comes to you and says, you have more in you, give me more. Like, it's like someone just stares directly into your soul and is like, I got you. And it's like when people have belief in us, that was my favorite part. It's like, I have belief that you're gonna bring your best, and you can pinpoint that. Pulling that out of people, like, moved me to become better. And it made me wanna bring my best every time I was in the classroom. And that's something I think that's life-changing, because you don't get that 50 minutes with everybody all the time. So Time is our most precious commodity, so how do you bring out the best in those 50 minutes?
I love it.
And within this community, Jessica found such a source of giving, a special sisterhood she tapped into, and then harnessed that generosity into helping others.
Ronnie and I, my husband and I both worked at a smoothie company. It's similar to like a Jamba Juice here, Jugo Juice in Canada. And I was doing the training and development with all of our franchise partners. And there was a part of the training where I wanted to incorporate community and giving back. How can you use your business for good? Like, hey, can you give $1 of every smoothie? And so in the last day of training, we started hosting these like smoothie days. We'd canvass the businesses around, say, come for a smoothie by donation. I had to train them anyways. We're using the product. Don't make it go to waste. And we would have lineups out the head office door and people were donating. Sometimes people would bring checks for $100. And so the very first need, I met these two kids. I was teaching Sunday school at church and I met these two kids. So they have spinal muscular atrophy. They were able to walk a little bit when I first met them, but they've declined. So it's a rare genetic disease. It robs the body of movement. The nerves die off. Your body doesn't have the gene to reproduce the nerves. So your nerves are what talks to your muscles. And so they were slowly losing their ability to move and being able to have the equipment that makes it accessible and easy for them to move. They couldn't use a standard bike. They needed a bike with 4 wheels on it and, extra handlebars and extra support on the seat.
What are their names?
Sean and Shania. And I still keep in touch with them today. They weren't supposed to live past high school and they're both in college. They are incredible, like the most amazing humans. But I saw a gap in their life and I was like, oh, we can just fill this. And so then it was like, oh, their parents are exhausted. So I took them to Winnipeg to my parents' farm for like a 3-day trip and a break. And the most recent fundraiser that we did before we started charity of our own was raising money for a wheelchair accessible van for their family. Calgary's cold. It has lots of hills. Their van could barely get up like some of the steep hills. And then the ramp would break in like -40. And yes, I'm saying -40 degrees Celsius.
Sure, sure.
For us Canadians. And then the van would freeze. And so these kids would either be stuck outside or inside the van. So I saw a need and just decided, hey, there's something that we can do about it. And that was the very first big fundraiser that we did. We raised over $44,000, got some grants, and were able to get them an accessible vehicle that they still use to this day.
Around that time, Jessica and her husband, her hot Ronnie, found themselves expecting their first child. And if you're curious about how hot Ronnie really is, check him out on our Instagram at Gratitudeology. Go on. We'll wait. You're welcome.
I was told by doctors, hey, we don't think you're going to be able to get pregnant. I'd never had a regular period. I had struggled a lot with my health. Part of like being really puffy and uncomfortable all the time was I found out I was celiac. Ironic, my dad's a wheat farmer. And I found out I had endometriosis. And so those two, when those combined, can obviously lead to some fertility issues. So we met with my OB and she's like, listen, let's just start the process. And it could take a year or two, but let's rule out some things. So before we even started to have kids, we had my husband's sperm tested. She's like, well, let's just see the process. Well, my husband and I looked at each other on a trip and along came Swayze. Swayze, like Patrick Swayze.
It's the greatest thing I've ever heard.
Isn't it so cute?
It's the cutest thing I've ever heard.
She's going to be like a rock star reporter or something. She's wild and crazy. She suits it so well.
I love that.
And as if she didn't feel blessed enough, Jessica was about to get a surprise.
Swayze was like 4 months old at the time, and we got pregnant with our second. And it was like an oh shit moment. We weren't ready. Ronnie was starting a new business. I was on maternity leave. I had quit my job randomly, like without warning. We were living off of my income at the time before I quit and blew up our world. And then my husband started this business, as you know, like entrepreneur life crazy. And so my pregnancies were great. I taught fitness all the way through. I was teaching Legree and spin at 37 weeks, like being like, you do more, you over there, just walking around. I mean, probably waddling at the end. And we go into the hospital May 25th. I remember it so clearly. Like I started having contractions. I'd gone to the gym and I walked. I was like, I'm having this baby. I'm so done. Like I didn't love pregnancy, so I was so done. I walked to the gym for an hour on a treadmill. Later that night, 2 p.m., contractions start. Wait on the couch, like I'm watching Fixer Upper episodes, hop in the shower. I did my hair and makeup to go to the hospital. My husband's like, what are you doing? I was like, I want to look good for this. as you do when you're like totally delusional. So I go in, we check in, and I was like, listen, ladies, I've waited. I just had a baby 13 months ago. I remember this. I'm fully dilated, like, let's go. I was 6 centimeters dilated. I walked into the room. I told the team exactly what to do. I was like, you break my water. I'm gonna leave in the shower. When I tell you have to push, the baby's coming. So they brought in the OB that was delivering. I was like, listen, you cannot go do that scheduled C-section. Like, I'm gonna have this baby in the next hour. She's like, okay, we'll see about that. 45 minutes later, after they broke the water, I was like, I have to push, the baby's coming. And I say, it was 3 pushes. He was in our arms. I mean, it was like, no problem, no drugs. He was out there, like, getting to the shower, postpartum. We went home that night. I was sitting on a padsicle, holding my baby, watching playoff hockey with my in-laws hanging out. Like,
What?
yes. It was wild. Like, I was in good shape. I think I have an insane pain tolerance. But, like, you wouldn't have thought anything was wrong. Like, it was just like, wow, wow, wow. And my husband and I are like, we did it. Like, we have the $1 million life. Everyone wants a little boy, a little girl. Like, we're in it. And again, you're like, holy shit, how are we going to make this work? Two months later, we are with my parents. We vacation in Winnipeg. Google it if you don't know where it is. It's not a place that many people will vacation to. But we're with my parents, and my husband had driven back to open up a new restaurant that we were opening. And I took my little guy into the chiro. He was really colicky, and I thought, adjust him and it'll be good. And the chiro took one look at him, like she's looking. I had unzipped the sleeper. She's looking, and she's like, man, I don't like how he looks. I was like, excuse you? But she was like, his skin's mottled and he's really laboring to breathe. And if you've held a newborn baby, they make some weird noises. Like, they do. I think I was so sleep deprived because he was so colicky. I was like even more exhausted because it was constant moving, padding. And I took him into the hospital, like literally, I didn't rush to the hospital. I stopped, I got an Americano, picked up a sandwich for myself, called my mom. I didn't even call Hot Ronnie at this point because I'm like, he's the worry wart. And I got to the hospital, and the nurse kind of looks at me like, okay, like, you looked at the baby, there's like really nothing wrong. But she took out her stethoscope and put down it on his chest and like, counting the rests, she's doing this. And she's like, oh, we'll just bring you right back. And I'm not even cluing in about how quick this is moving. Next room, curtained off, you're now triaged, you're in. Next nurse comes in, exact same thing. Stethoscope, looks off. And she goes to me, we're just gonna bring you, Mom, come this way. We're just gonna bring you to a private room. And I'm like, we don't even have private healthcare in Canada, but it must be because I washed my hair today. And as we're wheeling back, I just see the words resuscitation room. And I don't remember taking him out of the bucket. I just remember feeling like I'd floated up into like an observation deck of being like, what is happening? And they had a team of doctors and nurses, and they're yelling out all of the vitals, like EKG, MRI, CT, page cardiology, page neurology. And a nurse had come up to me, and I think I'm just standing there like in shock because I didn't know where I fit in this picture. Like, this was not how my Tuesday was supposed to go. And she's like, you're gonna wanna get your husband. I said, okay. So I'm like, he's not here, he's back in Calgary. She's like, you're gonna wanna have him come back out. And so I grabbed the phone, called him, he came out, and we spent 6 days of just poking, prodding, testing, MRI, CT. And they couldn't find anything wrong with him. At one point, we're cheering for meningitis, Lyme disease, a bacterial infection. You're like, let it be a bacterial infection. Like, we can just give him antibiotics. And we flew back home to Calgary, met with our doctor. She sent us to the hospital. We did all of the same poking and prodding. And I remember the neurologist in Winnipeg goes, we high-fived. Like, I can hear that clap with my husband because he's like, I'm 99% sure it's not SMA. I was like, oh, we dodged a bullet because I had been helping these 2 kids, Ashan and Shania. They're in wheelchairs. So I was like, oh, that's kind of weird. But I'm like, okay, well, if you're 99, let's just be sure and test. And they tested in Calgary again. And after, 5 days of being in our Alberta Children's Hospital, the neurologist walked into the room and she's like, I am really sorry, Jessica Ronnie, but your son has SMA. And I was like, okay, like, no big deal. Like, I know Ashan, I know Shania, we'll need a ramp. We're living in a bungalow, so it should be okay. We'll need an accessible vehicle, but not for a few more years. I just did this fundraiser, so we can do that. And I'm thinking, like, I get the handicap pass, like little blue dangle thing in the window. I'm like, I get prime parking, okay. And I'm like, oh my gosh, at Disney, you get to cut the lines when you're in a wheelchair. So I'm like thinking all of these benefits. And the neurologist can tell that I'm like not cluing in. Like, I'm like, okay, no big deal. Like, problem solver. I always am like, okay, like, these are the benefits. Here's the good things that they are. And what she said next was, I'm really sorry, it's type 1. There's no treatment, no cure, and we don't think he'll make his first birthday. Our role will just be to keep him comfortable until he passes. And that is where, like, the next chapter of our lives just blew up. Totally, like, sideswiped what we had planned and dreamed and hoped for our life. And I know, I mean, I think that's such the beautiful thing is, like, I don't, need to apologize for the tears, but also just, like, the love doesn't disappear.
Okay. What are the odds of this? Because the fact that you had already helped a family with SMA, what are the odds of a child being born with this?
One in a million. And it's crazy because we had no family history. So parents have to be carriers, and you're missing a copy of the genes.
Type 1 spinal muscular atrophy takes away a child's ability to walk, eat, or breathe. And while it affects approximately 1 in 10,000 babies, that's still one too many. And unfortunately, it is the leading genetic cause of infant mortality. Statistics show that 1 in every 50 Americans is a carrier of the defect in the SMN1 gene that causes nerve cells to slowly die, leading to the debilitating and sometimes life-threatening muscle weakness.
And the crazy part is like, I married my soulmate. Like, I could have married Jeff Dayton. I could have married Carlos, my Spanish lover. I could have married this guy, this pastor named Micah. Like, I could have married Bob. I could have married Rick. Like, you can be married to anybody, but I really do believe I got to marry, like, my soulmate, the best person for me. And we both were carriers of this gene, the missing gene. So I would say I'm not religious, but I am a person of faith. And I honestly, you know how sometimes you're just like, gosh, I just wish the universe, for me, I'm like, God, I just wish you could fax me a memo of, like, what do I do next when you're in the chaos? And I literally believe, and, call it peace and how I've wrestled with it in the radical acceptance part. I literally believe God was like, here is the memo of the lane that you're supposed to be in and the work you're supposed to do. Because, like, there's just no way. No friggin' way. And I wrestled with, like, am I being punished? Did I not do enough good work? Am I, like, all of these areas that I have struggled to, like, make it make sense. And I think also the piece for me is I think sometimes it doesn't make sense, and you have to be okay with that. Because sometimes you just want to rationalize or make it connect the dots. And the piece for me in it is, and I radically accept it, is I'm not being punished. This is where I'm meant to be and how I can have a voice for those who don't have a voice. I'm loud, I'm high energy. And those living with SMA, they're robbed of body movement, of a really loud, solid voice, because it takes muscles to use your voice, your diaphragm. And so if I can move the needle 1% to make their world better, then I know that I'm working in my calling. And it's been hard on our marriage, hard on our family, hard on me, because you don't always want to roll up the sleeve and be like, yeah, we're going to do the thing. We've wrestled with, like, why are we pouring so much energy into a disease that, robbed us of the life of our second child? But I go back to the radical acceptance piece and feeling secure that this is the arena I'm meant to play in.
So, for the next 6 months, Jessica and Ronnie decided to make a conscious choice to make every day count.
After we got the diagnosis, I remember my husband and I went for a walk, and in that walk I had this nudge, and the nudge to go and help these kids. It was like the nudge to, like, pursue my husband. I had to chase after him. He was not like, you're amazing, I'm going to marry you. I was like, hey, it's me. And so I've had all these nudges along the way, and I just had this nudge, and the nudge was just bring the joy to your son's life. And I remember feeling, like, so confused, like, how would you do that? Because we were told you probably won't leave the hospital. He probably will pass unless you want to have him pass away at your home. And, like, we're just like, you're a new mom, like, your body parts are still trying to go back. And I'm like, I don't even know what's happening. I want a team. I needed a safety net. And so we do have amazing medical care, especially at our Alberta Children's Hospital. So we stayed there, and I was like, listen, if this is going to be your life, I would not choose these circumstances, but I do get a choice in how I respond, what this looks like, how I can show up. And I just picture myself in my son's bed in that hospital room. And I remember being like, if he can't move, if he can't talk, all he can do is feel what's happening around him. I'm like, I don't want him to feel sadness. and grief and sorrow and hurt and anguish every day. I want him to feel joy and happiness and light and all of those pieces of energy that like are the best parts of life. And so we definitely had the grief and sorrow and sadness, but we also had the joy and happiness and contentment about like, we're just doing this. And that was daily dance parties. It was moving our bodies. We listened to Justin Timberlake's Can't Stop the Feeling every day. And people would hear it come on, and the nursing team and, unit clerks, they'd come into the room to dance because it just felt good.
We're flying up, no ceiling when we in our zone. I got that sunshine in my pocket, got that good soul in my feet. I feel that hot blood in my body when it drops. Ooh, I can't take my eyes off.
And here, amidst the darkest of sadness, Jessica found gratitude. And I've got to be honest, I don't know if I could do it myself. I am in awe of her. And I tell her.
You are the most shining example of leaning into the most difficult parts and finding the lessons and just bringing the joy.
And Jessica brought that joy every day until.
So he passed at 6 months.
Yep.
Jessica realized she was faced with yet another choice. For the past 6 months, she had to stay strong and positive for him. And now, she had to find the fortitude to do it for herself.
And so we said, let's just use the pain as rocket fuel. And the big snowball for me was great women and now men have come alongside us and say, how can we help? What do you need? And they've just shown up, some with invitations, some without, and they respond to, hey, there's a gap or a need, we can fill that.
And on what would have been Lewis's first birthday, her community rallied around her.
And so for Lewiston's party, women said, how can we celebrate your son? Like, what a beautiful question to be asked. And I knew if we had just stayed at home and had like this small little thing where you maybe tried to light a candle, I just knew it would have felt too dark and too hard.
So what was this party?
So for his first birthday, rather than doing like a cake smash and having your kid there, we're just like, let's host a fundraiser.
So what would have been his first birthday? You were like,
Basically 6 months later.
How do we memorialize this?
Yeah, how can we
celebrate?
How can we bring the joy to this moment? Because it is so sucky. It's like, congrats, you don't have a kid. And I didn't want to sit in the darkness. And so we really intentionally chose, and I have a goal of one day being able to write the check for the $10,000 to fill the gaps just quietly where you need. But I just wanted to say thank you to the hospital and to the team there, because the programs that we were able to experience, like music therapy and all of the incredible nurses and the equipment, like that changed our journey. And I want that for other families. So we hosted a birthday party, charged overpriced tickets. We did a silent and live auction. I'd never planned an event to this scale. No idea what we're doing. I was a lunatic. I mean, you planned a lot of events. I had not. And
I'm a lunatic every time.
We don't have the friends that are like, let's auction off a yacht in, the Caribbean. And so I'm like, oh, by the way, we'd love to auction you off and you're gonna wear a Speedo. And that is what we did that night. He was the last auction item. Our friend, I think, bought him for $3,000.
Oh, Ronnie.
Yeah,
Ronnie wore a Speedo. Okay.
Wore a Speedo, danced, we sang happy birthday, confetti cannons went off. And that really was the focus of like, how do we shift out of like the sadness into the joy? And the joy was like, what can we do? What is in our control? And so that's what we do every year. And that snowballed into us. We started a registered charity foundation in Canada. We've raised $2.5 million. And it shifted the trajectory of like all the things I wanted or dreamed of or where I thought my life was going to go, totally different. But what an amazing, for me, it's a legacy for our son. And I don't get the privilege, the honor, and the blessing of getting to, this year he would have been in grade 2. Last year was in grade 1. And those moments where, they plant trees in grade 1 in Canada and the teacher saw the gap and was beautiful and gave me a tree. But like, those are the moments that can suck you down. And we've just chosen to, in the suckiness, it's like, where can we bring the joy? How can we bring good? How can we, make this count? And that was a real intentional choice for our family. And it continues to be. I don't know if it gets any easier, but it really changes for me, it's changed how I think and how I look and how I act.
You can like crumble, or you can confront it with humor, joy, and somatic movement.
Yes.
And that's how you choose. So tell me a little bit about that. So now, obviously, I know you at this point in your life, your journey as a keynote speaker, which is to infuse joy and to use your story to just inspire others.
I would also say one thing that I always talk about is like, my hard is different than your hard. Because I don't want ever people to think, and especially when you talk about grief of a human, like sometimes, women have loss at 6 weeks, or they have loss at, 12 weeks or 20 weeks where you don't even get to hold your baby. And so I just say hard is hard, loss is loss, grief is grief. And the big focus for me is like, how do you not stay in the grief? How do you not stay there? How can you move from the problem to what is possible for your life? And the possibilities are endless, but it's a choice. It's a commitment to show up and stay in the game.
Today, Jessica is a speaker who empowers others through their struggles. Watching her on stage is like witnessing a bright beam of sunshine. Because I follow her on Instagram, I watch her behind the scenes journey prior to getting on stage each time. I watch how invested she is with the audience, meeting people beforehand IRL, hugging them, dancing with them, keeping them in the light, all while she herself is getting ready to go on stage. Quite simply, Jessica is a spiritual cheerleader, an ambassador of joy.
Learn the power of being grateful for having a voice, being able to use it. And I think the real secret sauce there is helping people move from problem to possibility. Because like, this is just a choice. And that is a guarantee that we will all face in whatever we're walking through in our lives. And so I just love being able to help people shift the mindset. And for me, I really started to geek out on the neuroscience. And like, this is why I believe in health and wellness is such an important focus. Like I always tell people, you want to change your life, start on your health. Do that. That's the number one thing that you can do. What you put into your body, how you move your body, where you're showing up. And so being able to be on stage and share this message of whatever you're walking through, this is just a series of choices. And what I've really boiled it down, because it's like, well, how does this apply corporately, or how does it apply in your everyday? And understanding the neuroscience of you will face 60,000 thoughts in your day. That's it. That's the average statistic that you face. I mean, I've heard a bunch of stats. This is coming out of Stanford. And out of those, 80%-ish are repetitive, but not all of them are true. So then our brain looks for the evidence. And what I've gotten really good at is looking for the evidence of what is true, because when you see it, then you hold on to the belief. Like the fitness moment where, like, if I looked at you and you wanted to quit, but if I was like, Jamie, you have 2 more left in you, your brain's like, you don't have 2 more left in you, but your brain could also be like, Jamie, we've got 2 more left in us. And it might feel impossible, but you access something in your brain, then you look for the evidence, and then you show up with that belief. And that is the power that I've learned from losing my son, Lewiston, and all of these other hard things that I face is like, this is a choice. What thought will you hook onto? And I look to make sure that they're powerful thoughts that will get me to where I'm dreaming of, or to get me to where I'm going. And along the way, because I don't know how many days I'm guaranteed, they say 30,000 is the average, like I'm just gonna go all in and make them count. Because if I don't get tomorrow, I want to make sure I like use today to the best of my ability.
I love that. And they say neurons that fire together wire together. So the more you practice finding the evidence of the good,
Yes.
the more your brain intuitively goes there and
Yes.
doesn't immediately think, I don't have 2 more in me. Your brain's like, yeah, fuck yeah.
Yeah,
I've got it.
Right? And then
Yeah.
all of a sudden you find this strength that you didn't think you had, but you actually do, because it's a battle in your brain. Like in everything we face, it's like, where does the joy lie? So I wrote a book about Bring the Joy, all the moments that really led me to making this my life's work, about how can we bring the joy and bring the best into our everyday.
And Jessica has a lot of reasons to keep bringing the joy every day. 2 in particular.
I got pregnant and I had my little guy, 2019. I had my third, Hollis, and he's wild and crazy with the biggest head that bobbles around, loves golf. It's so, I wrestle. I don't feel like my family's complete, and I don't know if I'll ever feel that way. You know how some people are like, oh, I just had this kid. I wanted a family of 4. I wanted to drive a Suburban, be the soccer mom, and that is not my life by any stretch of the imagination. But I'm so grateful for the children that I do have and the opportunity to get to love on them and raise them. It's incredible.
Of course. Were you worried when you got pregnant that, because genetically, were you worried that would happen?
Yeah, we chose not. You can do like a ton of like IVF, and then they do they do genetic testing on it. And we chose not to go that route. One, it was like 50 grand Canadian. Two, I had reached out to a bunch of other SMA moms and like community members, you know, through social media platforms. And I was just like, man, it almost feels like the success rate isn't that great. So the odds are 25% chance that we would have another child with SMA, 50% chance that they're carrier, 25% chance nothing. I was like, if I was in Vegas and someone's like 75% chance you were gonna win tonight, like put it on black, do it, I would put it on black and go, like, those are good odds. And so we went through it and we tested at 12 weeks. And I remember I was inside a baby store, West Coast Kids. I got the phone call and I was shaking because I'm like, what would happen, what they said? And the lady's like, she was really monotone. And I remember being like, oh, what's this gonna mean? And she's like, I just wanna let you know your child does not have spinal muscular atrophy. I screamed, I fell to the floor. Like, I'm talking snot running down my face. And it was an incredible blessing.
So, what's next for Jess? What big plans does she have in her sightlines?
What's next? I'm flying to Vancouver next.
Now and what's next? Yeah, it's what's now and what's next.
I'm in my zone, and I think you and I, we talked about this, where it's like learning to be grateful to be exactly where your feet are planted, and that is something I wrestle with because I am a person that wants more. Like, I have ADHD. I'm always searching for dopamine hits and give me more and book more, and then I'm also being like, you dreamed of moments like this where you would have a career that felt like you were doing good and giving back and being on stage. I've always wanted to be a speaker. And my mom had said, what are you going to speak about? Like, you're not an Olympian, you haven't landed on the moon. And I'm speaking about joy and how you move from problem to possibility, and it's a beautiful spot to be. So I'm truly working on being content, and not content like where I'm lazy or that I'm just like stagnant, but content and grateful to be where my feet are planted, and then building up this business to continue to have freedom and flexibility with my schedule, to be in the moments with my kids. And there's a lot of sacrifice with the travel along the way, but there's so many blessings about getting to meet people and help just hopefully shift their perspective or change how they may look at something or show up in the hard. And so I'm continuing to speak. I coach women. I love that. Small business and executive women who are maybe stuck where I was years ago, where you're in your head, you're not externally processing, you're on the hamster wheel and you're not seeing the momentum. And I'm in this incredible spot where I have momentum in my business. And then because of a social media platform and the fitness community that continues to expand and good people, we have our charity foundation. And so I've made peace that it doesn't have to be the biggest charity organization, but we're just going to do good with where we're at. So it's going to raise $600,000 this year. We have some major events. Hot Ronnie's in a Speedo for our son's 8th birthday. And in that have come some of the best moments about bringing community together and helping them go through the hard. And along the way, it's like have some dance parties in the street, in the airport, wherever I'm at, and make the moments count with the people that I'm with. That feels like a really cool spot to be in because I've worked really hard to get here and it hasn't always been that way.
To date, Jessica and Hot Ronnie have raised over $2.4 million for the Love for Lewiston Foundation in memory of their beautiful boy, to help children and their families living with spinal muscular atrophy, or SMA. Her book, Bring the Joy, is a brave testament to resilience filled with laughter and meaningful insights. She also continues to coach, helping others reach their potential while continuing on her path of gratitude, enthusiasm, and grace. You can follow her on Instagram at @Jessica Janzen. That's all for today. Remember, if you like what you heard, if it impacted you in any way, and if you think it's a message other people in your life might like to hear, I'd be so grateful if you'd give me 5 stars, leave a quick little comment. Those things really help. And share this podcast with your friends, either on social media or just word of mouth. I'm on a mission for us all to help each other focus on expanding our attention towards what's good in the world rather than focusing on what's bad, one person at a time. If we all did that, even to our own little sphere of influence, the world has the potential to be a much more radically awesome place. Stick with me, friends. I've got your back. We're in this together, and it's a great day to see the greatness in the day. See you next time. The Gratitudeology podcast is written, executive produced, and hosted by me, Jamie Hess. Sound design and studio production by Gotham Production Studios. Our theme song is Maze by Hills, sung by Nadia Ali. And don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Gratitudeology.
Set us down.